Chapter 23. A Meeting in the Dark. Asquith moved slowly at first. With each step he would test the ground with his new leg before he would risk putting any weight onto it. Jekyll was ever at his side, offering support. She placed one of his arms around her shoulders and held him around the waist so that he could safely take the next step. At first, Asquith seemed to appreciate all the help that Jekyll was giving him. He wasn't moving fast, but he was moving. Then after about 3 steps, by which time he was now outside the cell, he shushed his wife away. "I can do it, woman." Jekyll let Asquith go, and he almost immediately fell over. He leaned against the custodian's desk for support, touching the top of the desk to within an inch of where Orsa was sitting. Jekyll hovered nearby with a concerned look on her face. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, woman," Asquith replied. "Let me do this by myself." Orsa didn't move. He just glanced down at Asquith's hands and then gave the elderly man a funny look before asking the question. "Is he all right?" "He'll be fine," Race assured him. "He just has to get used to having 2 legs again." Orsa grunted his understanding and placed his axe beside him on the desk, leaving a hand resting lightly on the wooden handle. Asquith pulled himself back into a more upright position and made a move for the door. To Race, the elderly man seemed to be doing much better now, but he still grabbed hold of the door jamb to support his movement as he reached the threshold of the building. Then, a moment's effort, and he was through the door. Back in the cells, the young teenage woman and the woman in her mid-20s each took hold of one of the children that they had been sharing a cell with and began to guide them through the door and out of the cell, as they too approached the door of the custodian's house and the corpse of the elven guard that had been watching over them. The eldest of the 2 women placed her hands over the eyes of the child she guided, so that the child couldn't see the body. Race couldn't help thinking that it was a bit late for that. The body was easily visible from inside the cell, even if it was partly hidden by the desk, and by Orsa, who was still sitting on the desk. "Well, that's it," Race said as the women and the children followed Asquith and Jekyll through the door. He left the cell himself and walked over to Gagara and the window she was watching through. "It's up to the villagers as to whether or not they'll accept us now." "You mean they might decide to leave us behind?" Gagara asked worriedly. "Wouldn't surprise me if they did," Orsa grumbled. "They might," Race told her, "but it doesn't matter. We did the right thing. Besides, I think Creeley will support us, and I'm sure that Asquith will." He patted her gently on the shoulder. "As long as you're willing to be slaves," Orsa commented bitterly. "Slaves?" Gagara voiced worriedly. "My brother would never allow that to happen," Race insisted. Race had thought that Jekyll, along with Asquith and every other member of her family group, had left the custodian's house to join the meeting in front of the large municipal building. He was wrong. Jekyll suddenly returned. She entered the building, glancing worriedly at Orsa, and then the 2 Harpies gathered by the window. She was shivering. Maybe with the cold, the air wasn't exactly warm tonight, but Race was certain that she was scared. Race could empathise. She was alone in the building with 3 vicious-looking monsters. Who wouldn't be scared? Jekyll swallowed hard. "I need to talk to you." Race took a step back from the window but made no attempt to approach the elderly woman, as he had no desire to spook her any further. "What do you need?" "It's more what you need," Jekyll replied. She glanced quickly over her shoulder at the Minotaur as if she expected him to be creeping up behind her. I think I have a couple of skirts that you and," she indicated Gagara, and seemed to be searching for the right word, your friend could wear." "Oh," Race said. His ears pricked up. It would be nice to have something to wear and at least keep part of him warm. "What kind of skirts?" "Well," Jekyll said, "I'll admit they were designed for wearing by women, so some of them do have a floral pattern on them. But I'm sure they'll do the job until you can get hold of something better." "A floral pattern," Race commented. He tried not to smirk. Jekyll was only trying to be helpful. "Somehow, I don't think that's a good idea. Any elf would know instantly that something was wrong if they saw us wearing a skirt with a floral pattern on it." "Actually, I was thinking of the children," Jekyll replied. "You walking around naked all the time isn't something we want to subject our children to." "Then I suggest you get used to it, Jekyll," Race informed her. "I'm sorry, but the elves brought a lot of Harpies with them. Nearly all of them will be naked. Hopefully this hiding place of my brother's will be safe from such creatures, but nothing is certain." Jacob's fear seemed to evaporate. Now she was beginning to look angry instead. "You won't even consider covering up?" "Sorry," Race replied meaningfully. "I appreciate the offer, but any such skirt really needs to be of a single basic colour, and preferably made from animal skin such as leather. If there is any discoloration, it should be natural and not patterned. I seriously don't think that wearing a floral skirt would be a good idea. To be quite frank with you, I'm not even sure that Gagara would be willing to consider wearing such a garment. Maybe we'll find something more to our liking when we reach my brother's hiding place. Greyforth used to have a nice selection of trophies taken from his conquests, including a selection of proper Harpie-made skirts. You'd be willing to wear one of those skirts? Jekka asked. Her anger seemed to be calming down now, and there was no sign of her fear returning. So long as my brother took the skirts with him, Race agreed. Until then, I'm afraid you'll have to deal with us the way we are. I understand, Jekka replied. She offered Race a quick smile and then left the building, following after the rest of her family. Well, that was fun, Race said, moving back to the window that Gagara was watching from. What did she want? Gagara asked. Something about a skirt, Race explained. She had some skirts with floral patterns on them. She wanted us to wear them. Really? Gagara commented. Floral patterns? There was a slight laugh to Race's reply. Yeah. Gagara seemed to be considering for a moment. I wonder how I'd look in a floral dress. It might be quite nice. Race looked at Gagara strangely. He couldn't be sure if she was serious or not. Then he glanced out the window at the meeting that was about to take place, and in an attempt to change the subject asked, So what's been happening? Not much, Gagara said. Just what you see here. No one has spoken yet, not that I'd be able to understand them if they did. There were about 100 people gathered in front of the municipal building. They varied in age, from those who were mere babes in the arms of their parents, to some appeared to be older than Asquith. By the way they were dressed, it was clear that these were poor people, and yet Race also got the impression that they were a proud people. There seemed to be a genuine feeling of goodwill amongst the crowd. A lot of them were chatting together like old friends. In a village of no more than 100 people, it made sense that everyone would know everyone else. Many of them seemed to be congratulating each other on their recent liberation from the elven rule. A few made a point of welcoming those who had been so recently held as hostages by the elves on being free once again. The main focus of the crowd seemed to be on the top step of the municipal building. Race could see 3 people up there. Tay was standing away from the other 2. He was leaning against the side of the building at the very edge of the building's facade, on the opposite side of the door from the stocks. Tay's head was bowed, as if he was ashamed of what he had had to do that night. The other 2 on the step were Creely and Goliki. They were arguing about something, and voices were raised, but even Race's superior hearing couldn't make out what they were saying over the hubbub of the crowd. Eventually, Creely and Goliki seemed to come to some sort of agreement. Creely settled back against the wall of the municipal building and allowed Goliki to take centre stage. Villagers of Fastbrook, Goliki addressed them, and then he emphasised each word as he announced, We are free. There were cheers from the crowd. Among the cheers, people were calling out the names of those on the top step. Long live Goliki, long live Tay, though no one cared to name the soldier. Goliki extended his arms and waved his hands downwards, trying to hush the crowd. Please, he said, please. He waited until he had virtual silence and he said, Yes, we are free, but we cannot stay here. The elves that were here will be missed. They will send soldiers to find out what has become of the garrison here, and if they should find us here, they will most likely slaughter us all without mercy. There was a murmur among the crowd. It was clear that having just won their village back, nobody seemed keen on the idea of leaving. Someone in the crowd even shouted, Next time we'll fight. We must leave the village, Goliki insisted. He turned to indicate the soldier. Despite the way we have treated him, Creely here is still willing to lead us through the forest to a place of safety. It will be a dangerous journey as the country is swarming with elves, but as long as we stick together, we will make it. There was some more murmuring among the crowd. What's happening? Gagara asked. I don't understand a word. They're talking about leaving the village, Race told her. They haven't mentioned us yet. Creely stepped forward to the front of the step. He patted Goliki on the shoulder and then turned to address the crowd. Today, your village is free once again. He didn't get quite the same response as Goliki had. Some of those in the crowd did cheer. Most, though, seemed to look at him blankly. Creely simply wasn't one of them. It is free because of men like Tay and Goliki, And then almost in passing he added, "And admittedly myself." This time the crowd cheered. Clearly though it was the mention of Galiki and Tay liberating the village that got the cheers. Creeley only got any appreciation through association. "But," Creeley commented, "we didn't do this alone. Indeed, we wouldn't have had the chance to liberate the village if it hadn't been for a group of passing strangers." "Oh," Galiki interrupted, "do we have to mention them?" There was confusion in the crowd. Who were these elusive strangers? And why weren't they standing on top of the steps with the other three saviours of their village? Some of those in the crowd began to look around themselves, looking for any unfamiliar faces. Finally, someone at the back of the crowd gave out a loud scream. "Ah! There are harpies over there in that building!" "We've been seen," Race told Gagara. "I noticed," Gagara replied. It was hard to miss. The crowd was on the verge of panic. If those standing on the steps of the municipal building didn't do something quickly, there was likely to be a rout. "Please," Creeley shouted, trying to calm the surging panic. "Do not be afraid of them. Yes, they are harpies, but they are our harpies. They are the reason that we are now free to gather here tonight. I will vouch for them personally." It wasn't enough. It seemed that few of the villagers cared anything for Creeley's point of view, even if he was one of those who had helped liberate the village. The crowd began to break apart. Some of the villagers who had gathered at the very edges of the crowd began to move away, and a couple of them even broke into a run, stirring others to do likewise. Things did not seem to be going well. "Silence!" a voice spoke loud and clear. This seemed to do the trick. The crowd began to calm down. Nearly everyone went quiet, and some of those who had broken away from the crowd began to make their way back. Evidently, whoever had spoken was well respected in the village. Race searched the crowd for the speaker. His eyes alighted on Asquith. The man looked quite steady now, standing on both his legs without anyone supporting him. His family gathered around him in case he should need their support. "You know me," Asquith shouted, "and you know I would never steer you wrong. These two harpies are our friends. I know it's hard to believe that any of the evil races could possibly do us a good turn. After all, you might ask, what's in it for them? It's true, these harpies are no different. They do want something from us. They want to come with us. They want to help our people to throw off the yoke of elven imperialism." "Why?" someone called. "Why should they care?" Asquith continued unabated. "These harpies didn't have to help us, you know. They could have ignored our plight, kept their heads down and continued on their way. If they had, then come the morning I and the rest of my family would have been executed. Personally, I think we would have been the lucky ones, as the rest of you would have been slaves to the occupying forces. These harpies not only made it so that Galiki, Tay, and that soldier could liberate the rest of the village, but they freed us from the cells. And what's more, look!" He pointed to his new leg. "One of them even gave me my leg back." "Surely that would require magic," someone, a woman, commented. "Harpies can't cast magic." "Really?" Asquith commented dryly. "Maybe you should tell these harpies that. And while you do that, be sure to tell the male that harpies only come in the girl variety." Race assumed from such comments that the woman who had spoken almost definitely had to be the village's teacher, Miss Broadbent. It was Creeley who spoke next. "The male goes by the name of Race. Yes, that's not a harpy name, it's Flourish. The female, I'm not too sure about. She does have a harpy name, Guguga or something." Several comments were passing around the crowd. The general consensus seemed to be that if Asquith trusted the harpies, then surely the rest of them should do likewise. But there were a few voices of dissent. Some thought that the harpies must have some ulterior motive for doing what they had done. Then Creeley called loudly, "Race, would you and your paramour like to join us?" Race waved in as friendly a way as he could through the window, and then he turned to Gagara. "We are being summoned." "Oh?" Gagara replied. She stopped looking out of the window and added, "Guess we'd better go then." "Come on." Race stepped away from the window and opened the door to the custodian's house. Gagara followed just behind him. Upon seeing Race begin to leave the building, Orsa turned his head to look at the harpy and said, "In case I don't see you two again, good luck. I hope we do get a chance to meet again someday." "Me too," Race replied. "Look after yourself." Orsa just smiled. He reached for his axe and rested it lightly on his knees. There were several alarmed gasps as Race and Gagara stepped out in front of the crowd. Once again, some of the people started to move away, trying to put as much distance as they could between themselves and the two Harpies. This time, though, no one fled. Asquith spoke firmly. "Silence! They aren't here to hurt us." Then he stepped forward, approaching Ray slowly, not because there was any fear in his body, but because apparently he was still a little unsteady on his new leg. Race waited for Asquith to reach him, and then he held out his hand in greeting. Asquith grabbed the hand gratefully and grasped it firmly. He took another step until he was standing up close to Race, and then he turned to face the crowd with his back to the Harpy, showing absolutely no fear whatsoever. "You see," Creeley announced, "they are not dangerous. Not to us, at least. Although woe betide any elf that gets in their way, as they have already proven this night." Some of the rest of the crowd began to surge forward towards the Harpies. Gagara looked worriedly towards her boyfriend. "Handsome? It's okay," Race tried to assure her. "Let them touch you if they want. They're trying to get over their fear of us." "If you're sure," Gagara replied, looking back at the approaching crowd. "What about my fear of them?" "Just stay calm," Race told her. Some of the villagers seemed to change their mind when Gagara spoke. It was as if somehow hearing a strange tongue being spoken by a Harpy brought back to them just how real the potential danger was. Others, though, got close enough to touch one or other of the Harpies. Then some of the touches turned into pats on the shoulder, as it became obvious to those in the crowd that no one was getting seriously maimed by touching the Harpies. Then someone offered his hand to Gagara. Gagara looked suspiciously at the hand and then glanced at her boyfriend, seeking help. "You've seen this before. It's a greeting," Race told her. "Just take it in your hand. If she moves it, let her." Gagara did as Race suggested, and shortly found herself shaking hands with half the crowd. Slowly, the crowd began to run out of people wanting to meet and greet the Harpies. "We must still be careful of Harpies," Creeley announced to the crowd. "Race and his girlfriend have very good reasons for wanting to help humanity against the elves. Most Harpies, though, would probably kill you as soon as look at you. I'll admit," Race announced, "most other Harpies still make me nervous." There was a little stilted laughter from a few parts of the crowd. "I was sent here with a mission to take you to a safe location. I still plan to carry out that mission," Creeley announced. "Had we gone when I first arrived, we would have made it safely through the forest without a problem. Now, though, the forest is likely to be teeming with elves. But with a couple of Harpies on our side, our chances of making the journey safely have considerably increased. Race, am I right in thinking that you and Gagara, Race corrected. "What?" Gagara asked, hearing her name called. "Nothing to worry about, my angel," Race assured her quietly. "Gagara, right," Creeley corrected himself. "Would you and Gagara be willing to fly over the rest of us, keeping an eye out for potential dangers such as elven patrols and other Harpies?" "We'd be delighted," Race replied. Race had been worried that he and Gagara might have been expected to walk the whole way. He wasn't sure that he would be up to such a journey, and he was certain that Gagara wouldn't be. "Thank you," Creeley commented. Then addressing the crowd, he said, "We need to leave as soon as we can. Return to your homes and grab whatever you think you can carry. Bring all the food you have, and clothing to keep yourselves warm. It's getting close to winter. We'll need to utilize every mode of transport available to us. If you have a car, bring it. Also bring out anything the elves might be able to use. If we can't take it with us, we must destroy it." "What about our homes?" someone asked. "Burn them," Creeley replied. "But," the voice called, "these are our homes." "These homes will be of no use to us, but might be of paramount importance to the elves. We burn them," Asquith announced. "We can always rebuild once the war is over." "You have an hour," Creeley announced. "Go and get your belongings, and we meet back here in an hour. Do not be late. I'm not going to hang about for stragglers."